Today, what we're working with is mostly from chapter 3 and 4, and we're working with authenticity and trust. Social contracts, whose body gets to remain intact in this world and whose must bend. So we're working with these patterns, beliefs, systemic oppression. We learn how we are in relationship to the world and the other inhabitants in the world through looking around and seeing how people like us are treated and how they act in return. And this is how we learn. They're talking very specifically, there's something in my gaze was learned. The downcast way I met the world. Their ancestors had taught the mask to us. And also, there was that hope and prayer that at some point, one of their descendants wouldn't have to do that, wouldn't have to look down, wouldn't have to fawn, wouldn't have to stay subordinate in order to make it in the world. A descendant, when I could relate to the world from an uncompromised body with brightened eyes, when I would have the space to be unguarded. If you are a person of color or of an identifiable group, you have that direct experience in your bones, and you have that as it's flowed through the generations. The experience of your parents, grandparents, other people in your community, and how they've negotiated that, how they've experienced that through their lives, and how they pass that along. And then Prentis says, when we know how and why the mask came to be, we know it is not the true shape of our faces. Again, one of the things I love about the depth that Prentis goes into in their book is we have our individual experience and how closely it's shaped by our experience in culture, with other people, with systemic oppression. And then how can we be authentic? And how can we trust that it's okay to be who we are if we have the experience most of our life that it's not okay, it's not safe? Empathy, mutuality, and connection are dangerous to injustice. And that's part of what stereotypes and systemic oppression are meant to do. They're meant to keep us apart, to prevent us from acknowledging and really knowing our common humanity. If we felt, imagine what we might change. If we weren't in survival mode, if we could be present and feel safe enough to be who we are. Our relationships, our social connections are the bridge between individual and societal transformation. And that really is our experience, that we need to be able to be strong enough, resilient enough, have done enough healing individually before we can take more risks about reaching out and relationships with people, with anyone, but certainly with someone who has different experience with us. If we're a white person, a person of color, if we're heterosexual, a person who's queer, there's an uneasiness there. There's a fear in some ways, because most of our experience with the other side is not personal. It's not one-to-one. And we have a lot of stereotypes that are keeping us on the other side of the fence, so to speak. So they have this potential, and they're also hard to do because all of these things that we need, collaboration, connection, boundaries, trust, authenticity, those are really affected by trauma. So with our own trauma and oppression, we don't have those skills in the way that we might have if we'd been living in a more equitable culture, society, a safer one. I learned to keep anyone else I perceived as volatile happy and to hide my own life away. I'm sure that's something we can all relate to as well, whatever that was our experience of. People pleasing, fawning, is that sense of I need to be somebody else in order to be included. We need to be always on the alert for anything that might be dangerous, someone who's volatile, someone who might turn against us. But what happens when we do that is we just don't show up as ourselves. We incorporate the guilt and the shame as I'm not good enough, or I'm a coward because I haven't been able to stop people pleasing in that particular relationship, many relationships perhaps. We have to be ourselves in order to be connected. And that's a hard thing to do with trauma. This is a piece of art that I created. Some of you have heard me talk about Fiery Jean Gravelin and Life as Medicine. I interviewed her for the Radical Recovery Summit as well. And I am not an artist. I'm more on the music and writing side, but not visual arts or painting or anything like this. But I love this exercise that we did. They just had a bunch of pieces of birch bark, like this one is. And I picked the one that was kind of funky and messed up on the outside, but it was very smooth on the inside. And so the picture here on the slide is what I painted in to the inside of that birch bark. It turned out to be a mask. I hadn't really been aware of that at the beginning, that I could hide half of my face with that. But it's also, for me, the reason I put this here is because it illustrates how much we don't know about the other people that we're in relationship with. And if we can take off our mask, if we were sitting here together, I might explain some of the images on there, some of what that means. If we can take off our mask and be more intimate, more vulnerable, create more conditions for trust, then other people can as well. And that's part of what we do here together as well. We practice not getting in someone else's lane. We practice being in our own body, our own experience, and really listening to somebody else and allowing them to have the experience that whatever they're sharing is met with an open heart and without judgment. This is a practice. Trust is the connective tissue, the lubricant that makes things go. All of the words on these slides are all quotes from the book. How has the past shaped us, and what gifts it has offered to us, and what limitations has it imposed on us? Let's sit with this for a little bit. What does our training allow us to do? So, training means conditioning how we experience the world. And what does it prohibit? What can we show, and what can we not? Notice what that feels like in your body. Take a few breaths. What are the gifts from your past? What are your limitations? If you were to say, I'm free to do everything except, maybe it's, I can't be honest with that person, or I can't, what pops into your mind when you look at that? What does your training, your conditioning prohibit? What are you not allowing to be expressed? No right or wrong. It's not saying that it's safe. We should express everything. Not that at all. We need to be careful. And a lot of the times we hold ourselves back more than we need to. So if there's no safety issues here, if you could do what you liked, there wouldn't be any repercussions. What are you prohibiting yourself from expressing? And can you be kind and supportive? We're not failures because we don't express everything. We're just looking at our conditioning. We live in a world with a nervous system, and there are certain things that we're encouraged and certain things that we're not allowed to do or to express. And sometimes when we become aware of them, then we go, I'm not going to live by that anymore. I'm going to take that risk. This is how it works inside. So let's take another moment to sit with that. Maybe to visualize reaching out, showing the inner side of your mask, maybe to one specific person, or maybe just for you. What do you long to do, or that you're not quite fully expressing? One of the things Prentis talks about, I love the personal stories that they're relating. I started a primary relationship with myself and learned how to attend to me, to take responsibility for myself, my anger, my joy, to maintain my integrity. They talked about meeting up with their father, who they hadn't seen for quite a few years. And they had come to the point where they were willing and they were interested in doing that. And they were also really taking care of themselves. So they say, I felt myself beginning to brace, my chest that had started to soften, hardened again. My body was communicating my limit. And then they got up and left because in order to stay, they would have had to compromise their own care. So again, we're coming back to boundaries as a way to be aware of what our internal experience is, and then setting boundaries to restore our sense of agency and choice, to shelter our authenticity. Sit with this for a moment. Do you know how to listen to the boundaries of your body? Your body holds the answer. You just have to listen to it. And of course, in order to know the boundaries of our body, we have to be comfortable enough in our body that we can stay there long enough to listen. Notice that. What comes up for you? Your body holds the answer. Let's move into the inquiry. So, this subtle ways that we protect ourselves is what we're working with here. These are some of the questions. What are the subtle movements your body makes to protect you? Bring to mind somebody that you can do this visualization around, someone that you feel safe enough to risk deeper authenticity with. Not someone who's a jerk who you feel really unsafe around. Somebody who you're most likely, if you share something deep about yourself or what your experience is, they're going to have a positive response. So visualize that. Bring their face to mind, or maybe you can see the two of you sitting by the fire or whatever that might be. And visualize what you might say. Hear the words. You might say them out loud if you want to. When I was doing this, I became aware that I was feeling very vulnerable inside, or I was really angry when that, whatever it is that you might share, and see what that looks like, how that lands for them. Be aware of their body language, the look on their face, if they say something to you, getting a positive response. Maintain awareness of your own sensations. As you study their face and voice for cues about them, maintain awareness of yourself. What does that feel like in your body when you take that risk and share something and then you get a positive response? So, as Prentis was saying about that meeting with their father, it had been going well for a while, and then he started getting into territory that was causing them to brace, to hold a bit more tension. So notice if you're feeling safe enough, maybe that there's no tension in your body. Maybe you're feeling that softening, that relief. You're breathing a little bit more smoothly. And then once you felt into that a little bit, visualize maybe a neutral, maybe even a little bit negative. So what changes in them? Something about their face, their body language, their words. In particular, we're noticing what are the subtle movements your body makes to protect you? Your breath might get a little bit less deep, less smooth. You might back up. You might see yourself moving back, or maybe you're feeling some kind of energy in your chest, your heart center. Notice the movements of your body. You've detected a low level threat. So it's not a big threat, but some kind of slight, you're not being met in this. You said something, they're not getting it, or maybe they're a bit judgy. And what does your body do? What's your response? Because this is a visualization, we're not actually in this experience with somebody right now. So we can always pull back, practice regulating, do this kind of moving between feeling a little bit of a threat, visualizing their face, what they might say. Of course, that's going to land on hundreds of times when we haven't really been met, or maybe we've been judged. History that comes in here as well. How does your body change? And then we practice regulating. So we soften our muscles. If you feel like your chest is starting to harden, maybe there's words there, maybe it's an energy. Open up your chest. Maybe put your hands on your heart. Breathe. We're making room for ourselves, whatever experience we're having, for the other person, whatever experience they're having, and what's between us, the relationship, what's going on there between us. Notice if any other memories, any other people, other experiences are coming forward. You might work directly with them. And whatever your nervous system is alerting you to, is it accurate? Is it more related to your history of feeling judged by people? Is there something you could do to open the situation or say, I was expecting a little bit more understanding or compassion? What's going on? However, it is you're working with this, we're practicing in order to learn something, to observe our own nervous system at work. And then what happens when we deliberately soften our muscles, become less defended? What is your relationship with this person in your mind right now? How does that change when you open your chest, when you soften? And as we become more regulated, we're more able to remember that this is a person. So when we're in a feeling of threat or danger, it's all about us. We lose awareness of the other person as a human being. So coming back into regulation, make room for the other person as well and for what's happening between us. This is a visualization, so it's not actually happening, but it's probably pretty close to truth. We have a very good sense if we say something, especially if we sit with it for a bit, what's going to be the response on their side and how am I going to work with that? Breathe, stay with it for another minute or so. We're acknowledging that it's risky to be authentic. And we're also noticing, how does my body respond? And can I work with that? Can I regulate? Can I soften? Can I open to the other person again? Can I be kind and gentle with myself? And then over the next minute or so, finish the inquiry, make a note or a mental note. What was that experience like to take a risk like that in your own mind? And just see our nervous systems are pretty responsive even when we're not actually in the situation. It gives us a little bit more space to notice what it is, what's going on inside, and to work with that.